G'day, doggies fans, all things Bulldogs. It's the early preview. Thought I'd get this one out there to you guys and talk about Canterbury versus Penrith this Thursday night at CommBank Stadium, the current temporary home of the Penrith Panthers. I'm expecting a sellout, even though it's a Thursday night. I think the Bulldogs will travel there, the fans, and ensure this ground gets sold out. And I think the Panthers fans will be there in droves to try and make it a really good contest out in the West this Thursday night. We are going to see, I'm going to go over the expected team lineups. I think the Canterbury one's pretty, as long as there's no injuries to come out or any injuries at training, I think you'll find the squad I name will be very, very close, which isn't that hard to do at this point. The Penrith squad, I've got a feeling that Paul Alamotti will actually get into the side this week, even with all the players back. Teams tend to like players from their past sides playing in those matches with something to prove. And I think Paul will do well against Canterbury as he did the last time that we played them. So I'm going to go over a few different stats as well. There's lots of stats which are showing why Canterbury is on top of the ladder that go beyond, what you're seeing on your typical sort of NRL stats and team stats. What I'm going to do is give you some stuff from the Rugby League Eye Test, which goes so far in depth to look at how teams are travelling and where they're playing the game of rugby league, which teams are, reducing the most meters from teams, which sides are getting the most penalties and six agains and conceding the most, etc., whose back three gets the most meters in the game of rugby league. And some of these stats, though, are a little bit, some were done in like May, some in April, some in June, so they're not 100% up to date. However, they are very, very relevant to how we have performed this season. We'll look at the last 5 games as well and some of the players from each side in this preview and what I think needs to happen and should happen. But just as an overall holistic view, the Bulldogs aren't going to get a better chance to tick another box and defeat a team that's dominated us for many, many years. And the reason that is, I felt last year was one of the turning points of our season. Although, we lost by, I think, 16-10 in the end and maybe scored a try pretty late. But it was, I think, 12-0 at half-time to the Panthers. But in a game where, it was a real test of attrition, and the Bulldogs showed that they were prepared to go head-to-head with the Premiers. And it was probably the best game the Premiers had played all year as well, as far as the way they went about it. Cleary got injured in that match just before half-time, which made it more difficult for them in the second half. And he was probably the difference between the two sides, as he has been in many of the games in their last 5 matches where they've managed to have 3 wins, a draw, and 1 loss, which has been the best sort of period for them. But looking at the sides that they've beaten, there's not one team that's currently in the top 8, although you'd consider the Broncos with their roster a top 8 side, and the fact that the Panthers beat them at home. So let's get into, I'll put up the sides that I think will play. I think the squads for the Penrith Panthers will be Dylan Edwards, Paul Alamotti on the wing, Tuggo. I think Casey McLean will hold his spot, Brian To'o, Blaze Talangi, Nathan Cleary if not injured, Moses Leota, Mitch Kenny, Lindsay Smith, Scott Sorensen, Liam Martin, Isaiah Yeo, Brad Schneider for the utility, Liam Henry, Isaiah Papali'i, and Garner, with Jenkins, Laurie, Eisenhuth, Tokelau, and Patea. I think I spelt one of them wrong. Tracy, Carraz, Cherry, Crichton, Montoya, Burt, and Sexton, the same backline we've had all year, all fit. King, Marnie, Saluka Fafita, Viliami Kickow, Jacob Preston, Bailey Hayward to start again with Kurt Mann, Josh Curran, Harry Hayes, and Lockie Galvin. The bench, Moran, Taff, Hughes, Hopboy, and Tuala, I believe, will be the extended bench. And that's the sides as I expect them to run out. and to be named on Tuesday. I think it'll be very much in that fashion. With Penrith, there is a huge chance that their young star, the Blondie out in the wing, Thomas Jenkins, may get the run ahead of Paul Alamotti, but I'm not sure. We'll see on Wednesday when they name the 24-hour squad as well. But I think Alamotti might come in for him. And I think it'll be Penrith's pretty much their strongest side that they can possibly field. But there's a huge exclamation mark on that. And the reason that is that their players backing up from Origin are definitely feeling the pinch. And it's another grinding season that they've got to sort of had to get started halfway through. Their other contingent have all just gone and played New Zealand on Saturday with the Baby Panthers getting up with a win, which I felt was definitely possible, even though I was over there and the Warriors have been riding high. Missing Mitch Barnett, I think, is eventually going to take its toll on that Warriors team. Was a good game, and Penrith, it could have went either way for a lot of it. And I feel the Warriors Penrith got in their heads a little bit. Scott Sorensen scoring 2 tries. Some of the tries Penrith score, they had to scrap their way to it. Good win in the end, though, for those young kids, and they'll take a lot of confidence out of that. But essentially, you're looking at a 4 or 5 day turnaround into the Bulldogs on a Thursday night, even though it's at home. It's at CommBank, which is more of a neutral ground for both teams. And I think this puts it heavily in the Bulldogs' favour. I felt if the game was during the day, even with a longer turnaround, I felt the Bulldogs would be a lot more suited. But at night time, I'm not sure what the weather will be at this point, but expecting our Bulldogs to have a comprehensive victory. And I don't normally say that, but I don't believe that there should be any excuses from this match. Obviously, there's context. You could lose a player on a wing, which we saw the Warriors losing their winger really does impact your depth on the day and how you've got to adjust, and makes it a real look. As soon as they lost DWZ and he was limping, Penrith, being the smart team of footballers they are, exposed that space and scored on that left edge. Or right edge, I can't remember now. It was definitely a game they had to win, and those youngsters did the job. And I'm sure those Origin players that are coming back into the Panthers side will be wanting to repay the faith of what those kids did in New Zealand. So it's going to be a blockbuster. We're playing the 4-time premiers, as we know, 5-time grand finalists, a team we haven't beaten a long time, and a box we must tick this season, I believe, if we're going to win the comp. If we don't win it in the regular season and we're still going and playing well against other sides, we may have to tick that box in September. But talked a lot about the Dogs ticking a lot of boxes against teams, getting in some teams' heads. It's definitely been working, and I think Penrith are going to realise they're up against the real deal this time. I think they realised that in the last match. They will be primed for this match, I'm 100% sure, even though I'd expect that Bulldogs physically are going to have an advantage over the 80 minutes, having had the better run-in. I must say it was an unfair draw for Penrith to have a 5-day turnaround after Origin into the Bulldogs or into any side after travelling back from New Zealand is just wrong, in my opinion. But I'm sure they won't be making too many excuses on the day or on the night. So let's have a look at some of the team stats, and then I'm going to talk about some of the areas which Canterbury have really improved in, which is the big difference as to why we are now on top of the ladder and why we continue to progress this season. But let's have a look. We play them at CommBank this Thursday at 7:50. Penrith have now moved into 6th position on the ladder. So let's look at the current ladder. And us doggies are on top with 28 points. Penrith into 6th on 17. So a huge, deficit to the Dogs at this point. It's a real logjam with after the Penrith Panthers from 7th place down to 11th place. You've got teams on 16, Cowboys on 15, and then you've got 3 sides on 14 and the Eels and Titans on 12, who are literally only 4 points out of the top 8. It is a congested ladder. It nearly got more congested with Storm escaping with a win over the South Sydney Rabbitohs, who I felt did a really good job and probably adds more merit to the Bulldogs' performance the week before, even though they didn't have Latrell. Raiders, lucky to escape with a win against the Tigers. I think they were given the rub of the green in that match for sure. So that was 2 sides that could have lost chasing us, which would have meant that we had a 4-point break on the Raiders and a 6-point break on the Storm had they had lost. Not to be the case. Warriors losing sort of brought them back down to 4th position, with Penrith, the big movers, jumping from 9th to 6th on the ladder. Dolphins losing to the Knights really put a dent in their hopes. A game where Newcastle got a heap of players back, which made a hell of a difference to their result. They still struggled to score points, but scored some really nice tries and had an amazing try disallowed at the end and had to win it twice, essentially. So well done to the Knights. But let's have a look at it. We'll go into this game against the Panthers. So head-to-head, 46 matches played in the NRL era. The Panthers lead 27-18 with 1 drawn. Our previous 2 meetings, we lost 16-10 on the 10th of May last year. And prior to that was 44-18 in 2003. A game where people expected us to lose by 60. We managed to score a few tries. A couple of good ones as well. The form guide, the last 5 games. So the Dogs have scored about 120 points, but conceded about 112 or something, which isn't good enough, or 102. Penrith with the greater for and against over their last 5 weeks. They've scored a few less, but conceded less, so got the better difference over the last 5 games. Their only loss was to the Knights, which was a poor loss. The same week we lost to the Dolphins in a poor loss, you would say. Cowboys a 30-all draw. The Broncos winning against the Broncos was really strong. That's where their sort of season really kicked off. And then they've had 3 wins since then. So this actually hasn't got the game against the Warriors listed here. So you got to add that in as well. So they've actually still had the 5 wins, or the 3 wins, 1 draw and a loss in their last 5 games. In their last 6 games, 4 wins, 1 draw and 1 loss, which has been the resurgence of their season. A team that was running last on the ladder not so long ago is now in the top 8, which just shows you what you can do. Pretty tough, resilient wins against the Eels, the Tigers and the Warriors. And honestly, they could have lost all 3 of those matches as well. There was definitely moments of real importance, and they got a lot of luck. And Penrith don't always get the luck, but they may make a lot of their own luck as well. Dogs holding on against the Rabbitohs in a game where we look like we're going to put 50 on them early, and they look devoid of any ideas. Come the referee, come poor discipline by the Bulldogs, exposed and acknowledged by the referee, I guess. A real stop-start affair from there. And that probably is what we're going to talk about with a lot of our statistics, is how the Bulldogs' ability to keep the game flowing is definitely part of the structure of what they're trying to do. We see it at the Panthers, we see it at the Warriors, and all those teams perform well in that sort of environment and are getting similar type results. But the Dogs are definitely leading the way in restricting teams' meters in numerous sorts of ways, which we'll talk about. But look, it's the last 5 weeks, we've had 4 wins and 1 loss. We need to improve on that. We really do. 11 wins, 2 losses for the season. The Panthers have had 7 wins and I think 8 losses for their season. So looking at all this, it's I don't think this is quite 100% updated, but you can see the teams have a similar tackle efficiency, similar completion rate. Panthers getting much faster play the balls than the Dogs. Dogs have really been slowed down in that area, especially in the last 6 or 7 weeks. Wins at the venue, we're slowly improving that with this having a good season, and overall they've won about 19 games more than the Bulldogs and played one less match since 1998. It's amazing how close a lot of teams are in that sort of statistic. So there you go. Okay, so what we're going to look at, the Rugby League Eye Test has done a lot of different analysis, and it's just an absolute treasure trove of things you can look at to see how the team improves, where they play the game of rugby league, where the hot spots are, where they score their tries, etc., etc. I'm not going to go over absolutely everything, but just give you an indication of some of the areas the Bulldogs have really lifted in and are leading the way in. Now, this was done after 10 rounds, and there was, they look at the expected points per minute, all this sort of stuff. It's quite amazing. But and the progression for the Bulldogs, has been quite brilliant over time. So if you look at where Canterbury scores their try and where they have their play the balls, it's has a big influence. Now, we really struggle to score when inside the 20 metres, but we actually now score the majority of our tries from about 17 metres out. And the Dogs lead in that area. We're like the best red zone team. It's not a percentage of time spent in the red zone. It's a amount of time, amount of tries we get from being there. And the reason that is it just comes down to possession and the pressure we put sides under and where we've come from. The distribution of the play the ball, Canterbury Brown 1 to 10, due from 2014 to 2025, tackled opposition 20, tackled opposition midfield, tackled in their own half to score their tries. So 2014 was spending 52.8% in our own half. Down to 2025 at 54%. So we're spending, this year, we're spending 22.7% of our time in the opposition's red zone. Only 23% in the opposition midfield and only 54% in our own half. So we're quite dominant going back to 2014, the year that we made the grand final, and we had big forwards and things were going well. But since then, we've found it very hard to get into the opposition's red zone. But we're spending a lot more time in the opposition midfield. Now, whilst there's big disparities there and it might not look as good even in 2025, a lot of teams are more condensed as well. So the way the game's being played with 6 agains and less penalties, but lots more 6 agains and that sort of thing, which I've got stats on that as well. What it does mean is it just puts the opposition and it puts the two teams in different parts of the field based on that sort of run on that they get. And probably with the 6 agains, there's more tries being scored because teams just are unable to cope with those extra sets, whereas the penalties used to give teams a lot of time to reset. So the game is played exactly where Canterbury wants it, away from their line, with or without the ball. So we're spending way more time than the opposition away from our own try line when we've got the ball and when we don't have it. We're keeping teams pinned. we've improved significantly as a side. We're plus 12 in set restarts, so that's set restarts that we get compared to what we concede. Now, when you're playing the game in the opposition's half as much as we are, and when you're holding on to possession, you're going to get more set restarts because teams are falling under pressure. And what it shows you is statistically, you get a picture that represents how dominant the Bulldogs are as a team. In 2024, we were coming last in this, right? So we were our net, so the amount of set restarts we conceded compared with the amount of set restarts that we got, we were last. So the way you work it out is how many set restarts did you get minus the amount that you gave away. And we were left with minus 17 in 2024, last in the competition. After 10 or 11 rounds this year, Canterbury were plus 12 and first. So we're going from last to first in getting set restarts, and it comes down to our ability to hold the ball, comes down to our discipline, it comes down to where we're playing the ball, how we're restricting opposition defences from marching upfield, which is a huge part of that. So there's so much which comes from that. So you can see the difference there. Canterbury minus 17 to plus 12. Dolphins minus 1 to plus 11. Warriors plus 4 to plus 8. Cronulla had a even disparity. They're plus 7 in 2025. Manly minus 6 to plus 6. Sydney Roosters minus 5 to plus 5. Para gone from plus 7 to plus 5. Melbourne minus 6 to plus 3. Penrith have gone from plus 3 down to plus 1. And then it's a long way back. Interestingly enough, though, so what it can tell you also is it doesn't always reflect how teams are going. Canberra had, at this time last year, had a plus 10 set restarts to set restarts conceded. This year, they're minus 2. Although we've now had about another 5 or 6 games, which can change things significantly. And I think it would have had a little bit of a negative effect on the Bulldogs. But looking at that first 10 rounds, when we had a lot of our players, especially for that first 70% of the season, a lot of our players that played, we won all those games. This is the reason why. This is what the picture was. So we're starting to get our team back to its full, the best side we can get on the paddock is pretty close. Obviously, Satili Tupanua adds a lot to us. And if we can get him back, that'd be fantastic. And obviously, Jamin Salmon had a lot to do with it as well, especially with the defensive stuff. And it'd be interesting to see. I'll probably ask the Rugby League Eye Test to provide another snapshot of Canterbury since Salmon was out of the side, because I think it is relative to if there has been a reduction in the amount of extra sets of 6 agains that we've got in the amount of different the ways we've restricted teams. Has that affected us negatively? I think for the most part, we've still been really good at it, even with other people coming in. There's so many stats there, and I will show you. The back three. I wanted to really talk about the back three. So average meters of first play the ball from your own try line. Canterbury second. So we're starting our sets 42 metres out for the average for our first play the ball, which is pretty phenomenal. You can see the teams that are up there, Warriors and Penrith. And this is when Penrith were losing a lot of matches. They were still playing the same system, having difficulties in other areas, which was costing them big time. Young players missing tackle, tired players missing tackles. But you can see Warriors and Canterbury starting their sets. These teams have a lot in common, the house that Gus built. It's not just because the Dogs are spending so much time in the opponent's 20-metre zones. If we remove sets started in the red zone, the Bulldogs are top of the NRL with their initial play the ball to open a set occurring on an average 32 metres from their front. And again, it's Canterbury, Penrith, Warriors, Canberra, which shows Panthers, who are making this resurgence pretty much after these stats were done, they were still doing a lot of the stuff that they do. They were doing it really well. I won't look at the Stephen Crichton, but his net meters per run has gone up significantly. He's very dangerous when he runs the ball. He's third in the NRL, getting meters above the expectation. Okay, so, and only Tamale from the Raiders and Moses Suli, who are both really hard to stop, are carrying the ball further beyond expectation. Looking at net meters per run gained minus meters per run conceded. We're second, and we trail Melbourne, who have absurd numbers of meters themselves. So average meters per run minus the meters per run we concede. So we're the best team for meters per run that we concede. And I think that's a real important stat in how we do what we do. So we can, and he's actually broken it down here at pre-contact and post-contact. And it's quite an amazing improvement in the Dogs, because we, for so many years, were conceding the most amount of post-contact meters and making the least amount. Like, it was just really obvious how poor we were at stopping meters from other teams and then getting them ourselves. Our back three are a huge reason why we are doing so much better in this area. Canterbury concede only 5.44 meters per hit up from their opposition players. Only Melbourne are better at 5.29. So that's before the contact happens. So what this shows you is the teams down the bottom here have the best line speed. Melbourne have the best line speed at engaging their opposition. Canterbury, Penrith, Dolphins, Newcastle, Cronulla. South Sydney worst in this area. Post-contact meters per run by the opponent. So that's before the contact, and this is after the contact hits. And this is concede, right? We only concede 2.37 meters post-contact. Our ability to stop players in their tracks is better than any other team in the comp. And quite funnily enough, you hear a lot of comments, and the perception is that we're small and we are conceding a lot more. But I think what this all comes down to is technique. Canterbury are the best side at getting players, holding them up, moving them in a diagonal direction backwards, which takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of numbers, and they dare teams to go one out and to play football against them. And some teams that have played footy against us have been successful, but we force teams into error. Their possession becomes harder. We win the battle over longer. Funnily enough, Brisbane are very good at the way they don't concede a lot of post-contact meters, but teams run 5 points, an extra 50 centimeters. They get an extra 50 centimeters per run than what the Dogs do. So run meters over expected per run allowed. We allow 1 whole metre fewer than an average team would be giving the same run starting point. So we're the best team out of that by far. 30 centimetres better than the Storm. We're conceding almost a metre less overall. This is another one here. So the eye test has actually broken it down, and we'll look where Penrith compares here as well. So from play the ball 1, play the ball 2, play the ball 3, 4, and 5, teams are ranked 1 to 17 in their ability, in the amount of meters that they concede per hit up. Now, different hit ups, different teams concede. Some teams are really good with their third and fourth tackle, but really suck on their first and second, and vice versa. It's been pretty much from reading this, the Bulldogs, for tackle 2, we're first. We can see the less meters on tackle 2. We can see the less meters on tackle 3, the least amount of meters on tackle 4, and the least amount of meters on tackle 5. Penrith, 5th on tackle 2, 2nd tackle 3, 3rd on tackle 4, 2nd tackle 5. Even the Penrith dynasty teams would fluctuate slightly across tackles whilst ranking highly. Another thing we've really improved in is the amount of meters we concede when we miss a tackle, which is all relevant. You can look at all the missed tackles, but it's what are you conceding from your missed tackles? South Sydney, if they miss a tackle, they concede 8 meters on average. Parramatta, almost the same. And you'll see these sides, South, Para, West, all outside the 8. Dolphins still outside the 8. Cronulla, got work to do in that area. Canterbury, number 1 in this area. We miss a tackle, we concede 5.5 meters. And not surprisingly, Penrith, Warriors, Roosters doing well in this area. And it's funny, Newcastle, who are really struggling getting points, have been pretty good in defence and conceded a lot less than some other sides. And, Dolphins should be doing better than they were. %60 of our misses are fewer than 5 meters as well, where last year it was 49%. So we're the best in the NRL in the amount of meters we concede from missed tackles and the percentage we miss that are under 5 meters. It says that we've fixed the scoring problems up to around 10, dominating the opening 10 minutes after halftime and before halftime. We've reduced our errors significantly, and we haven't given away as many set restarts, which has helped us a lot. We don't give up easy yards, we don't turn the ball over, and we don't give you repeat sets. Now, when our discipline's been bad against a couple of sides on a Thursday night in Queensland in the rain, or against Queensland sides in the rain, I should say, we've been quite bad in those areas and have been punished on the scoreboard for it. So up until that Raiders game, this is pretty much up until the Raiders game that we played them. To beat us, you got to play 80 minutes, which is Penrith's forte. It's their calling card. That's what they've been doing. Outlasting the Panthers for 80 minutes has been something that most sides haven't done, and I think they've probably only lost a few games where it's sort of gone the distance. I think the Eels had a couple of wins over them in that period in the regular season, where it had been sort of back and forth in play a lot, going set for 80 minutes. So there you go. A lot of the stuff there to look at. I'm just going to have a quick look at the penalties. Okay, so look, penalties and set restarts above average by referee and team discipline update. This was done after 14 rounds. So obviously Canterbury had been improved a lot in this area. leading up to that round 10 to round 14, we'd had a couple of loss. We'd had one more loss, which was against the Dolphins. But this first thing shows you penalties, average penalties awarded and set restarts awarded. So it used to, in 2018, it was 17.5 per game was the average amount of penalties per match. Dropped by 4 in 2019. 2020, it dropped down to 10. They brought in set restarts. So penalties combined with set restarts was pretty close to the 17. Dropped down to about 15 combined, then 16. 15 again, 15 again, and back to 17 this year. We're averaging 11 penalties a match and 6 set restarts per match, which is quite interesting. So average penalties conceded and awarded over 14 rounds. We've currently given away we're conceding 5.8 penalties per match, and we're getting 5.7. So it's pretty much on parity. A team like Cronulla getting 7 penalties per match and giving up 5.6. I'll tell you what Cronulla's really good at. They're really good at, they've got a lot of big boys, and they've got a lot of, they show a lot of aggression on the ground to get up and play the ball. I think they generate a lot of penalties through their efforts in trying to get up and play the football fast, which is how they generate all pretty much their best attack. And it awards them with penalties, no doubt. But lots of teams that would have you believe that they're over penalised or get the wrong end of the stick. And some of the sides that are down the bottom of the ladder, West's conceding 5.8 but getting 6.4. Sometimes it's when the penalties happen as well, which is a very funny thing. Warriors conceding 4.9, which is really good discipline. South Sydney only 4.7. Quite typical of Souths to be under-penalised. Warriors as well. I won't be liked for saying that, but the NRL does want the Warriors to do well, as does most people. I've said it. And the Roosters still the biggest cheats in their game, conceding 5.9. Raiders always been high, conceding lots of penalties. And these two sides are not getting as many penalties over the first 14 rounds. Melbourne, another side, give away a lot of penalties. Penrith giving away a lot more penalties. Obviously, just part of the DNA. And look, they're all averaging similar to the Bulldogs, 5.8. So the averages are quite condensed, you must say, which really shows you how referees try to manage a game rather than just officiate a game, because it's all done the same way. There's generally more penalties in the first half than the second half. They put the whistle away when things get tight, and then they make a howler when they don't need to. The net penalties, we're down -2. So that's an area we've got to be improving as the Bulldogs. And Penrith are down -8. So they've been more ill-disciplined than the Bulldogs, which is a good thing for us coming up against them. Set restarts, we're doing much better in this area. We're conceding 2.3 and getting 3.2. It was better after 10 rounds. A few rounds later, not quite as good. Obviously, not as many stars in the side, relying on people coming into first grade and doing their best, but it does weaken your ability to get your game plan on. But obviously, we're still doing quite well in that area. So set restarts, we're 4th in the competition for our net. You know, we've got 11 more set restarts and than what we've conceded over 14 rounds. And Cowboys going pretty bad in that. Net total infringements awarded versus conceded per team. We're +9 overall with our penalties and set restarts continued. Cronulla and Dolphins getting a huge leg up, but Cronulla nearly double the next best side for the amount of penalties and set restarts they get compared to what they concede. And seeing, some of the games they've lost, it's quite interesting. And Brisbane on nearly the bipolar result to the Sharks. So if the Broncos fix their discipline, you'd expect they're going to fix their position on the ladder. So we can see conceding and winning. Melbourne are obviously the best side at conceding and winning. But anyway, don't want to keep confusing people, which I probably am. Who gets the most yardage out of their back three? This will be the final stat we'll look at. So obviously this was done quite a while ago, but the Bulldogs have still maintained very strong yardage out of their back three. And considering when this was done, the Dogs were missing Jacob Carraz for probably the first 4 or 5 weeks. And he's definitely going great guns in that area. But average run meters for the first 7 rounds, where we obviously won 6 of our 7 games, our back three were well on top with 471 meters. Penrith, who were losing games, was still high on 443, which shows you the way the games are played. Warriors used to be much higher on that, but they were missing players like Dallin Watene-Zelezniak for much of the season, which definitely cut into the meters that they could make. And Brisbane way down there at 310 in the first 7 rounds, I should say. Also shows how teams play. 30 metres ahead of the Panthers after the first 7 rounds, and we're still ahead of the Panthers in this. And we can easily look at that by looking at the team's total run metres statistics. So what this is the average run metres per game ranked from rounds 1 to 7 since 2014 to 2025. Sydney Roosters were averaging 545. But look at Penrith; they feature on this list 5 or 6 times. Penrith last year 533. Penrith in 23 499. 488 in 2020. Warriors 21. Penrith 21. Parramatta 21. And Canterbury in 25. We're ranked number 1 out of all the sides, and about 9th since 2014 overall, which is really good. It's much improvement because going back to like 2023 even, we're only making about 250 metres. Our average metres off first play the ball from our own try line, 42.3, which I showed you before. Warriors 44.7. So we start their sets on average 42 metres out from our try line, 4 metres in front of the Broncos. And in front of Penrith, about a metre more than the Panthers. Our kick returns, we're having 11 kick returns per game. Penrith 9.7. So kick return meters are a big contributing factor, but they're not the only one. Teams that are steamrolling their opponents, holding possession, keep restricting the meters of oppositions, are going to get more kick return meters, and that's been the case for us. Forcing teams to kick from, closer to their own try line means that we've got more time in order to get that return back. And by doing that, we restrict the amount of meters that our team has to run back and defend. 30% of our run meters are from our back three, 70% from the rest of the team, which is quite interesting. Because we go from first in total meters from our back three to fourth in the contribution to the overall team, which means we're getting a much greater spread across the side. So another way of looking at things would be the normalised possession. Average number of play the balls per team this season. Canterbury are averaging 169 play the balls per game, ahead of Cronulla, Warriors, Souths and Penrith. So what you'll notice about these teams is that they attempt to be very disciplined, hold the ball and break teams down, which is why Souths have won more games than you would have thought. They've been way more disciplined, probably played a little bit less footy, but been able to go a little bit longer with sides and win some games that they may not have won last year even. Penrith, sticking to their system, probably needed to play some football, had some bad defensive issues as far as missing key tackles, dropping key balls, making poor mistakes at the wrong time and being punished for it on the scoreboard. Whilst they were still maintained in some of those games where they lost, they conceded early leads and then dominated possession and looked like they were going to score points, but just weren't able to get those points in probably 3 or 4 of the matches that they lost earlier in the season, games against South that they lost, etc. So raw total run meters is a lazy metric. So if we normalise the back three average run meters to assume that every team had the same number of play the balls, removing the bias of extra possessions, would that change anything? Adjusted run meters from the back three by team. And it does. Roosters go to the top at 443, Penrith 434, Melbourne 428, Para 425, Dragons 420, and the Dogs dropped to 6th at 417.9. So we are probably not doing as much as they are, but the way that we play, the way we hold possession and are able to keep getting possession is why we're able to make the extra meters, if that makes sense. We still rank highly, but are shifted down slightly due to sheer volume of possession they have over sides like the Roosters and the Storm. And Brisbane still rank last in that. So that's the whole thing. And I said this about the Roosters. If they hold the ball, that roster of theirs that they've had in their keeping for the last, since they won comps even, if they had a game plan which focused on more possession, they probably win a lot more games, and especially the games that they couldn't win, like against the Panthers and the Storm. So that says a lot about them and the way they're coached. I think there's been a commitment to try and play football and do things their way, which just hasn't worked for them. And if they adopt tactics of other sides like the Panthers and the Bulldogs and the Warriors, maybe the actual effort that they get from their back three then starts to transfer onto more wins and on the scoreboard. Because what they're getting is far more efficient than what the Bulldogs do, but the Bulldogs play a game that enables us to do what we're doing and to win 11 of our first 13 games. Penrith still quite good and up there. Percentage of team run meters by player based on a minimum of three games. So Carraz hadn't played at this point when this was done. But Jai Gray was getting 14% of his team's run meters. Ryan Toto, 12.5. Still the best in the comp. And I think you'll find Connor Tracy, 11% for the Bulldogs. You will find that Jacob Carraz is very high up that list once he's come into the team. And it's a very much a shared sort of result from the other wingers in the Bulldog side. And then you got teams, players that featured in this going back to, a long way to 2014. And you got Jared Hayne, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck numerous times, Jason Taumalolo in his peak. Ken Momolo had a great 2019. And Brian Toto is featured in there a few times. So that is that. So let's have a look now at some of the players that I'm just going to look at Penrith and show you some of the statistics. Now, Brian Toto is just so consistent in what he does. But let's look at the forwards. I'm going to look at Moses Leota. Now, he has definitely picked up a lot of slack from last year. It's not his overall best season by any means, but last year he was dropping down to 92 run meters per game, and that's lifted back. So the responsibility is lifted on him to 105, and his tackle percentage has been better than it's been since the dynasty started. In 2021. It's up to 94.78% tackle efficiency. So he's definitely someone leading the way for the Panthers. Always has. But, losing a player like James Fisher-Harris, he's definitely stepped up. Now, Lindsay Smith's one to look at because he's definitely picked up his game as well. And has justified his position as been selected by Mal Meninga in the Australian side. Only 68 appearances, tackles at 96%, and averages 119 running meters for this season. Win percentage at 69 is pretty bad for a Penrith Panther. Has been playing since 2021. But obviously, some of these younger guys had only come into the team when they were depleted. So they wore a lot of the losses. But 95.69% overall. But this year, 96.3% tackle efficiency and averaging 119 meters. So definitely stepped up to become pretty much their number one forward. It's still Leota. He's the man. I think the one to have a look at would be the effect that a player like Isaac Togo has had. He's only 23 years old. He's at 88 games. Now this year he's played all 14. He's played 14 matches. So he hasn't played all. He actually got dropped. His tackle efficiency is about the same at 88%. His run meters have dropped significantly, down to 116 per average. So with the ball, a lot less opportunities for him. Can be, when a team's not going as good and they're not getting as much ball and they're not doing as much with it, they're going to have reductions in what they do, but that's quite significant. He went from 139 to 157, one of the most damaging in the comp, dropped down to about 131 last year, and it's dropped down again. So he's one that's not playing at his best. You can't just do it on meters alone. We just looked at that through all those stats. But it's quite interesting when you have a good look at it. Dylan Edwards, another one to look at. So this year, 5 try assists. So it's quite high for this point of the season. 4 line breaks. She's probably doing more to create tries than getting into the clear. Tackle efficiency is way down. Obviously being left there as the last man standing to make a tackle. Running meters, 194 average. So it's come down about 40 meters on last year, which was his best year as a Penrith Panther. But yeah, there's definitely a decline in what you're getting from your fullback there. He's only had 9 games this year though. So he's probably more involved creatively with the ball rather than being the one, making the break and scoring a try off the back of stuff. And that's something he's got better and better at as a 29-year-old, is the way he can create his passing and that sort of stuff. And that's why he's got the Australian gig. And we'll look at one more. Let's have a look at Nathan Cleary, shall we? Because that'd be interesting. Don't you think? A bit more on Nathan Cleary. 27 years old, 92 kilos, about 6 foot. 183 games at that age. 11 games this year. Now let's compare it. He's in his 9th season as a Panther, or it might be his 10th. Yeah, it's his 10th season. Played 11 games, 5 wins, 5 losses, 1 draw. He's averaging 540 kicking meters, which is taking a toll on him for sure. Now, back then, he was obviously doing a lot of the line share since 2021, since 2020, I should say. And in their first premiership year, he had 548 metres. That got shared a lot more with Luai as it went down the road. This year, taking on a lot more of the kicking again, which is something which is it has an effect. Goal kicking conversion rate 90%, except for when in Origin. Try assists as a percentage, probably a little bit down. Offload similar. He's tackling at 91%, so his defence is better. And running meters way down on the last 2 years. So the last 2 seasons, 125 and 135 running meters for a number 7 is phenomenal. 101 is back to the pack a lot. But that comes down to the fact that he's having to do a lot more of the kicking. So when they get to share the ball, if you've got someone else who can put up the bombs and do a line share of the kicking, it enables your 7 to take those runs on a 4th tackle, for example, and not, and not just hand it off to the fullback every time, or not just hand it off because you got to be the kicker for the next set. Because he's going back and preparing for the next set, it's taken away from what he can do. And I swear it has an effect on the team. So when Penrith develop a player that can take a share of the kicking, again, it just adds another dimension to him, and it unlocks Cleary to be able to do more of what he does. They won a comp with him averaging only 96 metres. And you'll find that he did a lot of kicking in that year as well. So definitely a lot to look at when it comes to these players. Let's look at a few Bulldogs, and then I'll give you my predictions, and we'll go from there. You see the improvement in this guy. He just gets better and better and better. Tackles at 96.7%. His tackle busts are going up. He scored 2 tries this season, and his average running meters of 158 is a career best by a long, long way. And let's get a look at it. He's at 96.68% tackle efficiency. He's only missed 12 tackles all season. He's averaging 158 metres, up from 119 last year, 107 the year before, and 102 the year before that. Just an absolute monster for the Bulldogs, and one of the major reasons why he was selected. Now, when he first came into this team, he had 35 offloads in his first season, running as that second hit-up man, put the offload away in the next two. But 10 this year is at a higher rate than what he was getting last year. Played 19 games for his 14. He's played 11 for his 10 this year. So he's nearly back to getting an offload per game. And if we continue to do that, it's going to be good for the Bulldogs. 100%. Another player I want to look at is the addition of a Harry Hayes. Now, look, there was a bit of a perception test on Harry last week that he was, a bit soft into the contact a couple of times. May have copped a bit of a blow early, but definitely made 38 tackles against the Rabbits and only missed one, 109 metres. It was a phenomenal effort. And he had some big runs as well. But coming to our side last year, winning 5, losing 4, obviously playing a lot more minutes this year than last year. Tackle efficiency's up, though, playing way more minutes, which is always a good sign. And his average running metres, 111 per game, is so important to our team and a big contributor. He's only had the one offload. And it should say that he's had a line break because he scored a try. Or can they only give one line break? I suppose they gave the line break to Kurt Mann, I guess, because he broke the line and then gave the line break assist and try assist to Harry Hayes. Always good to look at Harry. And let's have a look at Josh Curran. Now, Josh will be a little bit misleading because he's played a mixture of edge, which does have an effect on his tackle efficiency with the way they got to defend. But he's played 6 games at prop and 3 at second row. Stop-start season for Josh Curran. Tackle efficiency a little bit down on last year, but as I said, he played in the middle pretty much all but 1 or 2 games last year. And his run meters are down because he's been playing on that edge where they just don't have the same run meters. He's still running as far. He's making tackles. He's running support plays, decoys, just as much. You can see there his fantasy points are up, which is funny, isn't it? Offloading at a good rate of 1 per game. Post contact's going well. He's making plenty of tackle breaks this year, probably more. But again, he's playing. When you play on the edge, you'll make more tackle breaks. Running at the smaller guys will get you some of that. And he's very consistent with his try scoring. Usually scores 4 a year. Scored 3 for the Dogs last year, 3 this year already in only 9 games, which probably adds to his fantasy points. And a win percentage at the Bulldogs of 20 wins and 13 losses overall. So we'll look at one more player for the Bulldogs. And let's have a look at, we could look at Jacob Carraz and all those great players, but let's look at Toby Sexton. 60 games for Toby, kicking at 80% in conversions, 6 try assists and 5 line break assists this season, 3 offloads, tackling at 91.5% defensive efficiency, and doing quite a good job. 2 tries for the season. He's never got more than 2 tries in a season. Average kicking meters way up there again. Taking a lot more of the share of the kicks this season. Burton's been out a fair bit, 342 metres. 6 try assists from 13 games. Played 16 games last year. Had quite a few more try assists. with 12. Tackle efficiency up to 91.5%, which is his best season. Don't worry about the last season. He only played one game for the Titans. Average running meters at 66. Now, it was definitely higher than that. It slowed a bit. That needs to go up. With Toby and Burton running the ball, we have a much better situation in our attack. You see his fantasy points, 45.6. Not that that really matters. So there you go. That's Toby Sexton. That's the Bulldogs. And now we're going to look at my big head. But that's the preview, guys. It's been a long one. There was a lot I wanted to show you people. I expect the Bulldogs to win this match. I'm going for a 25 points to 8 victory, which is an interesting scoreline. I think we will get away on them late and have a bit of fun and kick a field goal. I think the boys have a definite advantage in their preparation for this match, and there should be no excuses. If we go about and do what we've been doing, hold possession, play the game in the area we want to play it, and keep that ball in play, there'll be periods where Penrith, who are the team that, this is their baby, keeping it in play, outlasting sides. That's how they do it. So we need to do that. Now, I do have a feeling the Dogs will try. I think both sides are going to try and put some scoreboard pressure on early. I think Penrith will definitely try to do that. I think knowing that they've got a lot of players that are backing up after a short period of time, that they've had a lot of football in a short period of time, even though they had the bye leading up previously. It is going to potentially have them come out looking for a real ambush on us. And I'm expecting that. I'm expecting them to look dominant for a few sets. And hopefully we match that intensity, but know that it's coming and are able just to steady the flow, do what we've got to do, keep the ball in play, and then start to get to our work. That's how I think it's going to be done. I do expect that the scoreboard pressure thing will come. That'll be the intention, whereas the Dogs are quite happy just to set the game up, play it where they want to play it, and then run through their sets and do what they got to do, run their plays, hopefully execute some, if not panic, and just keep holding the ball, keep putting it up there and forcing teams into submission, which is as I said, that's what the Panthers do all the time. So hopefully we can go out there and do that, do it really well, and set this game up and give the Bulldogs fans a victory that we've been craving for a long, long time. It's a huge box to tick. I do think the Dogs will feel a little bit of pressure in this game. It's one that Serraldo, the guys will really want to win it for Serraldo. Sometimes that can have them a little bit, they might overplay their hand or something like that. But hopefully we will see these Bulldogs get some tries on early and just get their game on and have the Panthers really struggling to match them in every asset. But, they've got all those great players, some really great matchups. When you've got Kikau and Preston on our edge, Sorensen, who's been doing a wonderful job, and Liam Martin on the other. You've got Isaiah Yeo, the Australian captain at lock. You've got the Australian halfback in Cleary, Blaze Talangi, one of the newcomers on the block at 6, versus Burton and Sexton. They've still got the great players there, the Australian fullback. And to be honest, I think Tracy's outpointing him at this point, which is one I could have shown you, but we know he's got his meters up there. Try assists aren't too bad. He's scoring quite a few tries as well off the back of it. And Tracy's got some skills as well that he can use. to create a point of difference if needed. So I'm expecting to see a really tough game early, both an ambush coming from the Panthers looking to get some points on us early. And if we can hold that off, I think that sets us up to go a long way in this game. And set up a situation where we just punish them for their mistakes and push them into mistakes. So it could go a lot of ways. Obviously, injuries in the game, any sort of ill disciplines, going to be bad for us or them. We go out there, we play to 95% of our potential. I think that's enough to beat the Panthers this week. We go out there and play to our potential, we could blow them off the park. But we're playing one of the best teams of any era who have still got the majority of that spine and the majority of that team. And when they've got Mitch Kenny, Cleary, Edwards, Yeo on that field, they are very, very tough to beat against anybody. But I will say the teams we've beaten versus the teams that they've beaten, I think we've well and truly proven ourselves to deserve the position we're in. And we can put a real hole in their season and make it very, very difficult for them to make the 8 with a win this week on Thursday night. So that's my prediction, 25 points to 8, Bulldogs to beat the Panthers. Let's say 4 tries converted to 1 try. I'd be very, very happy with that. And that's what I'm expecting this week. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Hope there was some stuff that you learnt from this today. I know it was a little bit longer and there was some stuff in there that was a bit confusing to sort of articulate. But bear with me. Go check out the Rugby League Eye Test. Have a look at the different types of ways that teams compete and compare. And these are sort of the sort of stats that a lot of sides, a lot of coaches and analysts sort of look at. Not the be all and all, because there's a lot of averages in there as well, and averages can be very, very misleading when you're not looking at the players that are playing each game and that sort of stuff. But yes, I think that's there was some good context there. Possession's obviously a huge key for us. Discipline an even bigger key. We keep those 2 things in check, we're going to get the rub of the green more often than we don't. And that means we're going to be in a position where we're able to wear teams down and score points accordingly. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you like and subscribe. And I look forward to seeing you for the live podcast, where we'll talk a lot about this stuff again. Thanks, guys. Take care and go the Dogs.